what I'm going to say here in the next second at all for like topics and that.
Well, you don't tend to know what you're going to say for the intro anyway. I think the guys are used to it by now.
Yeah, fair point. And then I try to do that stupid thing where I pretend like we're halfway through a sentence, like these guys missed half of the in-stream conversation. They just came over late with some beer. Welcome to Red
Yeah, but I
Morning.
mean,
Oh shit! I forgot
you're
the. Sorry, go go go.
yeah, but you're kind of like the Pat Stedman of intros.
Oh, you're like the dead man of fucking Red Morning. Shit like that. Fucking Pat. Dude, do you know? I know you don't watch much like red stuff on YouTube, but dude, his "Why I Love Woman" video has been paying off in spades. I have clips of that in like every video I do where I have some like laminate shit thing. It's fucking hilarious.
Dude, I put a 65-inch widescreen in the entryway to my new apartment just playing that video on a loop 24/7.
I'm sure you have. I hate it though. That's kind of why I wanted to do like a not red topic, because that one it's done better than just about any video other than the short-haired feminist one where I shit on her.
Yeah,
And
but
that I knew
I
it
kind
did
of
well
think,
made me sad.
well, I just think a lot of this whole like red pill beef thing, it's sort of what keeps the people who do the content engaged. It's not really for the audience, it's for the content creators to get a break.
Oh, you figure.
Because if I'm shit talking you, I don't need original content or new takes. I just need to look at him and say, "Hey, look at that class 2 jaw."
Oh, that's a classic one. I haven't heard that. What was that, like 2 years ago?
Yep.
I actually had to look that. I hate that when somebody gives you an insult and you have to go look it up. Feels like that Simpsons episode where Homer is being called slow and it took him like 8 hours to figure it out.
Yeah, I think it was like the fourth episode or something of like Red Morning we did. Some dude was talking about that for like 20 minutes in chat.
Oh, I know. Very annoying. I miss. Whatever. We got Dante in here with Marty talking their shit now, so it's all good. I was thinking to start with food and drink because I love talking food and drink. Speaking of which, how do you handle like expensive alcohols? Like, I'll give you an example. I have that Glendalough Irish whiskey that's been finished in Japanese oak barrels, right? It's like
Yeah.
200 something a bottle. I've had one glass and I'm like afraid to drink anymore. So how do you handle your expensive top shelf shit?
I generally drink it.
Oh, you just don't care? You just get drunk one night and
Well, no. It's like there are two categories of expensive shit.
okay.
There's expensive shit you can easily buy again. Like, let's say a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue or one of the more expensive Macallans.
Right.
Those I just drink. I try to make a rule for like, you don't drink a bottle of Macallan 21 just because you want to get drunk one evening. That's what the Black Johnny Walker is for.
Right.
But with the distilleries that have gone out of business or whiskeys you can no longer get, those I tend to avoid drinking as much as possible.
Huh. See, I didn't know that was a
At the same
thing.
time, at the same time though, once you've cracked the cap, the value of that bottle is gone monetarily.
That I didn't know. So it's kind of like, dude. So is this like an adult version of collecting like Star Wars toys? As long as it's in the original packaging, it's still worth a lot.
Well, no, it's not about the original packaging. It's about whether it's opened or not.
Well, the original packaging, the
Like,
wax seal.
like if you have an unopened bottle of famous whiskey from a distillery that no longer exists but is highly regarded, those can be really valuable.
Is that even a thing though? Like I figured if a distillery was highly, or not a distillery, like whatever they call them, the brewery or distillery, whatever. If they were highly regarded, why are they out of business?
Yeah, but you have those Van Hochs of distilling, right?
Okay.
So usually like local smaller distilleries that were discovered after or very close to bankruptcy or being bought up by a bigger company.
Oh, I get it. So okay, actually that makes more sense. Because isn't it thing like where Scotland now, like all the distilleries kind of feed into the same 4 or 5 different groups now, when it used to be like hundreds?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like with Belgium has it that way with beer. It's like you have like what is it, like 1,200 individual breweries in Belgium,
Really? Jesus.
and a lot of that is based on the whole concept of things being local, which is how we used to have it with most of our spirits, our food, our beers, our wines, etc. But now it's so global that something that kind of goes gets to a point where you can't get any more of it. That's what has the most potential to skyrocket in value.
And what kind of value are we talking about here too? Like I'm wondering if you bought a bottle for $100 and all the stars aligned to get all this Mona Lisa like shit going. What kind of like value are we talking about here? Is it like a $200 bottle or is it like a $2,000 bottle?
It's a at least an easy 10x.
Jesus Christ. Okay, that's actually much better than comic books and hockey cards and Star Wars figures and Nintendo gadgets.
Well, what you have to keep in mind is like you have a fairly big market because you have whiskey collectors and you have the people who like to show off. Like
You sell. I'm picturing you to selling. Yeah, that's your two possible clients then. The old Irish man from Old Money and some brand new SoundCloud rapper.
you're not far off.
Oh, I'm probably not. Wasn't that how like Cristal got its big break? It was kind of like a mid-tier French wine. Then all of a sudden, Dr. Dre started talking about it, and now it's like the thing.
Yeah, but like the same thing with Hennessy.
Which I still don't. Is that a Scotch or is that like a sherry?
It's
Or
a brandy.
oh, it's a
It's
brandy.
like a brandy or a cognac.
Dudes are drinking brandy. Ew.
Well, it's not a horrible brandy, but the one they're usually drinking is the worst one.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like I like brandy for cooking. I tried drinking it. I don't like it. It's like I think it's cuz brandy's like the leftover shit that they make wine from, right? And then they distill it and make like a whiskey from it or whatever.
Well, brandy is generally any kind of distilled spirit made from fruit. And then you have cognac, which is a spirit made from grapes from the specific region where they make champagne. So
Oh.
cognac is essentially champagne that's been aged and distilled in oak barrel, and been aged in oak, distilled and aged in oak barrels.
That would
And then
make
you have
sense
another, and then you have another variant called Armagnac, which is essentially the same thing from a different districts. And those two tend to be held as the most expensive categories. And then you have, a delineation within them again. And then you have like the grade system that they use for cognacs, which is, the very special, your VSOPs, your XOs.
See, that would explain the headaches then, because I'm not a huge red wine fan, just because the tannins whoop my ass. And yeah,
Yeah, but it's
cognac and sherry, I've tried them, and it's all it does is it's like, hey, fuck your head, man.
I love sherry for sauces. I'm not a huge fan of drinking it. It's more of an old woman's drink in my book. And then, let's see, where was I going with this? I've been switching over to doing a lot more Italian wines or Spanish wines because you can get the same body and fullness you get from some of the better French ones from, like, say, you have Barbares, you have your Amaronas, etc., and from
Okay.
Italy, and then you have your Rioja from Spain, which are it's kind of like the same. It's 12 to 14%, kind of a heavy, can be somewhat oaky, very flavorful wine that's very good with big dishes and flavorful dishes.
Dude, I'm a huge
So
fan
I,
of the oaky wines. I don't know what it is about that buttery flavor to it. That's my favorite part.
yeah, that's usually how we identify Americans.
Ah, you son of a bitch. All right, here I'm gonna do the super
Anyway,
chats quickly. We got it. They're building up, but I don't want to lose them. We got Carl Marlin, $10 with a good morning, gents. I would say good morning to you too, sir. Link Zelda 64. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Your recent borderline video and the editing behind it makes me appreciate how you can help guys not take women so damn seriously. Fuck that video, man. I hate that thing. And then, oh wait, where did paying my overdue Carl tax from Dante? Look at that! Look at
good.
that! You are European. There's a tax just for you to be here.
That would be nice though, but I wouldn't. I would prefer to do it like a value-added tax as opposed to a regular income tax.
I like that. Makes more sense. Very self-aggrandizing. Oh, brandy. So here, I'll do. Guys have wanted a recipe for a while. Here, guys. I don't know, Carl. Do you ever make a flambe?
Occasionally, but it's a rare thing.
Okay. Well, here, guys. If you want a good thing you can do with brandy, here's one of my go-to like pickup days. Hey, you hungry? Let's have some ice cream. You get some ice cream. You put it out. You take whatever. If you have any fruit, just take it out, like cherries or whatever. Pour brandy into the pan, light it on fire, and give it like a couple stirs until the fire goes away. Pour it over top of the ice cream. You'll look like a goddamn pimp. Call that one. I think it was called like an ice cream flambe. And then cause whatever like fire is there ends up cooking the cherries or whatever fruit you got in there, and it's perfect. Can't go wrong. Plus, no girl turns down ice cream. They're fucking lushes.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've done brandy sauces for savory dishes too on occasion.
Really?
Yeah, you just do like you can do variants of it. You can do like the demi glace version, which is like a mix of brandy and demi glace, or you can do a regular dark roux, but instead of using wine, you use brandy.
Oh, that's going to be a strong tasting sauce, man. I was just thinking over that one.
Yeah, but the ideal one, if you want to do like one of those sauces, I would recommend just deglazing the pan.
Well, that's the easy way to do it, of course. But you know the French,
Well,
they have to go fancy.
Yeah, but if you deglaze the pan, throw in a little bit of butter, maybe a dollop of cream or something, you'll have a pretty decent cream sauce.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you might have to filter it if you want to go all fancy and make sure it's like crystal clear. But then, because
Yeah,
what's
but
the French style? You start with the mother sauce, right? You get your mother
Yeah.
sauce, which is like a roux with cream, and then from the mother sauce, you kind of add the stuff from there.
No, you got your mother
I'm still
sauces
learning
wrong.
it, so I'm not the
Because
best
like,
with
your
French.
mother sauces, and I'm going to look them up, not because I need to, but just so I have all the names for them. But you have the velouté, which is a light roux with thickened with with chicken stock and then added with milk or cream. You have the bechamel, which is like a easy white roux. You use milk instead of the chicken stock. You bring it up, and then you can add. Like if you want to do a cheese sauce for a lasagna or anything, you always start with like a bechamel base.
Yeah, and then just add the cheese to it and whatever spices.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you have the Espagnole, which is kind of like the dark sauce that you make demi glace from. You have Hollandaise, of which a variant is the Béarnaise, which is one of the more famous kind of steak sauces. Like most steak sauces will do a Béarnaise.
See, I don't know the Béarnaise sauce. I kind of know the Hollandaise with like the egg and the oil, but
Yeah, the Béarnaise is essentially the kind of the same as a hollandaise, but you use you throw shallots in a pan in with butter and you just kind of soften them. Then you throw in tarragon, and then you use white wine vinegar and you reduce that down, so you get a white wine reduction.
oh yeah, I pulled it up
Then
here.
then
Well,
you
that's
put,
interesting.
and then you put like a I just use a metal bowl or a glass bowl on top of like boiling water.
So like a double
Just
boiler, or whatever.
Yeah, make sure it's not too hot, and then you add your egg yolks in there, and then you add your reduction. Then you whisk that up, and you add melted butter to it. Just do that slowly until it thickens.
That's a neat little emulsification. Yeah, it's one of those. Like my girl's starting to get into Spanish cooking because she found out how awesome smoked paprika is. But then I found a guy on YouTube who does French cooking, and now I'm like diving into that rabbit hole. It's actually kind of fun. The latest one I want to do, he does these weird like fish dumplings. Oh, dude, they're fucking
Okay.
awesome. He just blends like frozen whitefish in a food processor, adds butter and cream and eggs to it. And then you just slowly, like, he has this weird scooping technique, and you boil them for a little bit, like, or poach them, I guess. And then you add a white sauce to it and put it in the oven and roast over top. They look really good, but I want to try it.
Fair enough. They sound good.
Yeah. Because I didn't
I
realize. I thought all French cooking was just like the fancy 5-star Michelin chef. I didn't realize they have like a whole subgenre of like country style French cooking, which is more like the stuff you can make at home without feeling like a pedantic fuck.
Oh yeah, they have like so the French peasant foods are some of the most interesting you'll find. Like beef
Not gonna
bourguignon.
argue with you.
Well, like beef bourguignon was one of those classic farmers' dishes because it's like a very tough cut of meat with like red wine and onions and potatoes and carrots and that. Just cooked for like 3.5 hours or something.
Ooh, it's like a Mexican shredded beef recipe.
Yeah, or you have variants of it where you substitute the red wine for dark beer, which are also very good. And I generally tend to think like farmer style or peasant style cooking is one of the more interesting things to learn about a country because you can tell a lot about it by that thing. Like if you ever go to a Thai restaurant, you want to know, you can always tell if they're Thai or not.
Is this the limes thing again?
No, if you order the papaya salad
Yeah.
and it's not good, they're not Thai.
Huh. I've never actually had a papaya salad, and I eat Thai all the time.
It's very good. The reason why is it's kind of like one of the most like national dishes they do. So everyone who grows up Thai has to learn to cook that fucking dish. And they probably cooked it like 300 times by the time they're 18.
Gotcha. It's like finding a Canadian who doesn't know how to make mac and cheese. I get it. I get it.
So it's like most countries have like a variant of a dish that even like kids know how to cook.
That's kind of neat. I don't know. It's one of those things I like getting into, and I'm on like a movement right now, like to get better at it. Because I don't know. I know for a fact they're gonna lock us down again, man. I just have a feeling. It's everything's going too well, and we have 3 steps and then a full opening, and each step you had to have so many people with 1 shot and so many people with 2 shot. We hit the 3rd shot 3 weeks ago, and they said until the 3rd shot we need 70% with 1 dose and 25% with 2. We're at like 69% with 2 doses, and then nobody said shit about opening again. And I'm just like, oh, they're gonna lock it down. I have a feeling, and all I'm gonna have to do now is prep cook. And if they take the gym away from me, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Yeah, people here are essentially getting to the point where they don't have the balls to do another lockdown, man.
See, I wish we had that. That's the problem. Is right now nobody wants to be the first guy to remove restrictions. Like everybody's paranoid about one person dying when they say, "Yeah, go outside and have fun," and they're like gonna be nailed to a cross. There's just enough panicky people.
Yeah, like kind of my take on it is like you're gonna see, like kind of because Americans are kind of like the hair triggers of the industrialized world. They'll snap like 5. Just the talk of lockdowns will have them all snapping and getting guns. Then you have like category 2 people who are like, okay, we'll accept the restrictions for 2 weeks. And after that, we're going to start suing the government. Then you have like the 3rd category who are like, okay, we'll accept the restrictions for however long the government deems necessary, provided they can provide adequate reasoning and evidence to justify their take on it.
Hey, I think that's me.
And then you have Canadians who are just standing there holding their ankles.
You got us. Oh, I don't know. The whole thing, it's annoying. Because nobody, like... you know what? Whatever. I don't want to get into this. I think these guys were expecting me to rant about COVID, and they're taking shots right now.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. It's a guy here. I remember a manager who went to the gym, went nuts, and physically assaulted an associate who was annoying him. I could tell the gym was his outlet because of the lockdown. Well, to be honest, like I almost beat a guy to death with a bike on an escalator earlier.
Oh, you really did. Why? Just because he was in your way?
No, but like, yeah, because that's one of my things. Like, I hate being hindered, and I hate slow walkers, and I hate slow talkers because they cost me time.
Oh, dude, I'm so with you on that.
And it's like, if you want to saunter through the fucking grocery store, be my guest, but at least keep your fucking eyes open and don't stop to chat with your fucking girlfriend and block the goddamn aisle.
Dude, my worst are the ones where the guys are walking across the street but they have to stop there and take a picture of like the CN Tower. And meanwhile, I just want to get home with the dog food. I've almost hit somebody 150 times and just like, do you think I could just drive fast enough away that nobody would get my license plate? And I seriously think about it. And it's always that same suburbanite from Saskatchewan, big fucking potbelly. And they, for some reason, think that the yellow line is the perfect spot to take a picture. Drives me nuts.
Yeah, like the worst one I had today was the girl I almost smacked in the face with a package I was carrying. Well, I had to go pick up some stuff, and this was a fairly big package, about 50 pounds and about, let's say, 5.5 feet in length.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way I could carry this with any kind of efficiency was to hoist it onto my shoulder. But if you carry something, it's not 50 pounds isn't that heavy, but if you're carrying that while walking 1.5 miles.
Oh, it wears down fast. Everybody knows that.
Yes, yeah, and like there's a reason why I love strong lifts 5v5. I'm good with like 5 reps, then 2 minutes of rests, then 5 more reps. I'm not good with doing fucking long distance shit.
Yeah.
So I'm carrying this thing on my shoulder, and I'm going to swap it from like my right shoulder to my left shoulder to kind of give my delts and my traps a break.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing this like vertical suplex like fucking move to swap this from one shoulder to another, some teenager with a fucking cell phone, like face glued to the cell phone, walks into the path of this package. And for a split second, I was like, I could just pretend I lost control and just smack the shit out of this bitch so she learns not to look on her goddamn phone on the sidewalk.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, if I just throw a little bit of hip into that one here, it might get the point across. We're not suggesting to do this, guys. YouTube censors, just be aware we think violence is wrong.
Yeah, violence is obviously wrong, but at the same time, some people need their ass kicked.
That was the thing I was going to do. So Cal accepts the science, juice your veins, and everything go back to normal. Dude, I was actually talking about this, and I hate how, like, the Overton window is now on this, like, pro-vax, anti-vax shit. I don't see that as the issue. The issue is, like, government forcing you to have medical procedures. And, like, you can't travel in 2 tiers. Like, but that's the point. When you're talking about vaccine efficiency, you're kind of missing the point. But that's not the part I was curious about. The part that gets me is, you know the Sandford prison experiment, right, Carl?
Yeah.
Remember how at one point they were, I guess if the audience doesn't know, at one point there was this thing about eating sausages, and some prisoners were protesting by not eating the sausages. They threw them on the ground. The guards kept telling him to eat the shit off the ground, which was kind of weird. But the interesting part was that they started punishing all the prisoners, and then the prisoners turned on the guys that were protesting against the inhumane treatment. And I was thinking about that because Twitter has blown up with guys basically saying, fuck you, you're the reason we're locked down. And I was like, dude, like, the political guys who are, like, setting up these policies have done a wonderful job recreating the Sandford prison experiment.
Well, my take is kind of like, I'm not a huge fan of the government forcing people to get medical procedures.
Yeah.
However, I'm kind of at the point where it's kind of like the complex discussion about, like, what can and can't a government do, right?
Right.
So a government can put you in prison for breaking the law.
Mm-hmm.
So they're restricting your freedom because you broke some law.
Right.
And we accept that. Okay, what's the difference between that and refusing a vaccine?
Ooh, well, in this case, I would say it's changing the law without due process to make the thing illegal to do the same thing. Does that make sense?
I completely agree with you because that's one of the issues.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a legislative issue. Like,
Right.
if government believes in this, then they should do the necessary legislative work to make this legal instead of doing it by probably some kind of executive order type shit.
Yeah.
But number 2, though, should a government majority vote be a carte blanche? Like,
Well,
if there's, let's say there was political will to say that guys named Ryan can't have faux hawks.
Well, Jesus, this is such an issue. That's close to my heart. Please go on.
Well, point being that you can't just land on the level where you say that, okay, well, if the legislative branch decided this is the law, then it is the law that every Canadian married man has to let Ron Ford fuck his fucking or whatever the crackhead mayor's name is.
Rob was the crackhead. Doug is his brother. We have Doug
Okay,
now.
fair.
Rob died.
Because at that point, I think you're kind of moving into human rights territory, right?
Right.
And I think most Western nations are signatories to the UN Council on Human Rights.
Well, not just that. Most people have their own constitutions. Like I know Canada has a constitution, which pretty much the same as the states. They just have that extra line saying it has to be weighed against the public good, which is a very weird vagueness that they're hinging all of this on. But I agree. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think the public good in itself is a rather questionable thing to deal. I don't think that should be a criteria just on the basis that I could argue that anything would be in the public good. Like I could argue it would be in the public good to deny 98% of you motherfuckers driver's licenses because you can't drive for shit and you're slowing down traffic.
Oh, I agree. It's just vague enough. Like it would never pass muster in any legal description. That's the part that annoys me. It's just right.
The same
for
thing as
abuse.
probable cause. It's kind of a woolly thing.
But I think that's supposed to be the point of it too, right? Because I'm used to military had this one charge called conduct unbecoming, which means exactly what you think it means. It means if I want to charge you with something, I've at least got this. Because there's nothing you can say that's not conduct unbecoming. It just means like an officer or a senior NCO didn't like the shit you were doing, and they don't have a category to lump it under.
Yeah, and I think in the military, I would give them a bit of a wider berth on that because the second you go into the military, you're kind of giving them an extra set of rights over you.
Yeah. Well, no, they
Like
flat out tell you like you're giving up certain rights and freedoms for the serving in the military. Like you accept that.
like for instance, like in most European nations, they banned drug testing by law, except for the military.
Yeah,
They
it makes
usually
sense.
have a clause that, we can drug test you whenever the fuck we want. And I kind of think that's a fair deal because you're in the military, you're flying a $200 million jet. I kind of want to know that you didn't snort bath salts before takeoff.
Yeah. Well, at the very least, it's the same thing as the argument against cops, right? Like, well, people are like, well, cops shouldn't, people are doing this. It's like, yeah, cops get like legal force. So they have to be held to a higher standard. And I agree, the military is the same. Hold it to a higher standard because they have higher, abilities to fuck shit up. I guess in lack of a
Yeah,
better
exactly.
word.
So, well, my take on it is like, I think that a country shouldn't be able to say to its citizens that you have to take this vaccine in order to leave the country. However, I think it's fair for other countries to say that in order to get into this country, you have to be vaccinated.
Yeah, well, you see, that's the thing that gets me then. Because there's ways to do this. There's legal ways to do this. There's ethical ways to do this. There's moral ways to do this. But they're slightly more difficult. And I think that's what gets me is all this bullshit is just lazy. It's not even evil. If it's evil, I could just grab a pitchfork and start stabbing people. But it's not evil. It's just lazy people who don't want to put in any effort. They're like, just throw a fucking passport on this thing. That'll fix it. I'm like, dude, if we're having a true global pandemic of something that's seriously dangerous, why do you need a PR campaign and to do all this bullshit to get it through? Like, it should sell itself,
Yeah, but at the same time, though, like if you want to travel to Asia, you have to get like a yellow fever vaccine. You have to get like Hep C. Like we know this shit.
Yeah.
This has been standard practice for travelers for fucking years. And it's the same thing with driving. Like, driving isn't a right. You have to go and get a fucking license to be allowed to do it. So I don't see that as being a problem. To say that, okay, you know what? If you want to work with sick people, you have to be vaccinated against, these four things. Or
Well, it's like you said,
if
there's like the need has been expressed and any reasonable person would agree with it. But it's still a choice,
yeah, kind of.
Well, I guess yeah, anything you want as long as you need to eat. So it's a choice insofar as if you want to do. Okay, yeah, fair enough. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, so that was kind of like where I was getting at with it. As long as you can justify why you're doing it, like with COVID, it's difficult because of the relatively low lethality of COVID based
Hmm.
on the data we have now. Now, there could always be errors in the data because different countries log things differently. You can always expect like industrialized nations to do better based on having better healthcare systems, but we also have more old cunts, and we're also keeping a lot of people who need 19 different medications to stay alive.
Yeah, fatter people generally in developed nations make it worse.
So those are risk factors, but at the same time, those have to be weighed against people's human rights. And the way I see it, you have the right, like, if you don't have the right to say, I will put this or I will not put this in my body, then you essentially don't have any rights left.
Well, yeah, like isn't that the whole idea of property rights being how Western civilization was founded? Then property in your own body being your property, wasn't that kind of like the fun? I'm not very good at the natural right thing, but isn't that like the fundamental principle? You read Kant. Am I on track here or am I off my rocker?
Kant didn't write natural law.
I don't know.
Anyway,
One of the
the
nerds.
whole idea behind natural law is just that okay, these are the rights you have in nature. You can decide what to eat, what you put in your body, and not. You
Yeah.
can invest your effort into, let's say, growing an apple tree, and that is your apple tree, provided you can defend it, and so on.
Right. So basically stuff that wasn't given to you. You just have it.
Yeah, and nobody gives you those rights. Those you have by default, and then you can accept limitations of those rights in order to be in a society, which is the social contract, which I think they're kind of pushing the limit on a little bit in a lot of industrialized nations.
Yeah, I think.
But essentially, what the social contract was essentially okay, let's say I've grown an apple tree and you've
Hmm.
grown a pear tree. I can tell you, like, I'm getting sick of fucking apples, and you can tell me I'm getting sick of fucking pears. So let's trade 50 apples for 50 pears so we get a change in diet. That's our right to make that deal.
Right.
I can tell you that, hey, I want to go fuck my girl. Can you watch my apple tree while I fuck my girl? And then when I get back, I watch your pear tree while you go fuck your girl.
Hmm.
And at that point, we have like a voluntary cooperation in order to that gives us both benefits.
Right.
And it doesn't give us, and that limits your rights in a way, because if I've told you that okay, I'm going to watch your pear tree while you fuck your girl and I bail, then you have a legitimate grievance because I broke a deal.
Right.
But if we haven't made a deal, you can't get pissed at me because I was sitting under my apple tree calmly eating apples while gay lube stole all your pears.
Oh, there's a blast from the past. That fucking guy. Yeah, the whole
And
thing.
that's
It's
like the
just
basics, but
yeah.
but then you
Okay.
get the additional factor over that, which is the public good.
And that stuff I
And
get. So like some kind of way of certifying that your apple tree is actually apples, so that way I don't have to do due diligence on every time I buy a pack of gum to make sure it's not formaldehyde. That kind of stuff I understand.
yeah, and I also understand things like mandatory vaccinations for polio or tuberculosis or other plagues that we used to die from in droves. But I just don't get why the anti-vax shit kicks so hard with COVID. Because it's not more, I wouldn't call it more controversial than your average flu vaccine.
No, not well. We can get into the mRNA thing. Like I said, I'm all up for it. I would just love if they finished the stage 3 trials first. That's
Yeah,
my
yeah,
only
I'm
issue
getting
from
my,
that side. But I'm sure, like
I'm
it's.
getting,
Sorry, you're saying you're getting.
yeah, I'm getting my second dose of mRNA this week.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's
And
probably safe, but
so far, the only side effect is that I've developed 5G.
yeah, my side effects include 5G and taking flights to anywhere ever. I think we're going that route. It looks like Canada is going to make it officially like second class citizen if you don't get both pretty soon. And for some reason, we ordered like 400 million doses, which doesn't make sense for 2 doses per 35 million people. But what do I know? Grandmaster C, by the way, thank you. Miami to Atlanta drive. Listening to you guys makes it bearable. And Wando, Six Semper Tyrannis, give us free. Is that what that means?
It's probably something with the emojis. I'm not sure what the hell he means by that. But
well, fair enough.
Well,
I think it's Latin.
Well, it's kind of like, not to make this red pill again, but it's kind of like a relationship, right? Because you kind of have to limit yourself a bit when you're in a relationship.
Right.
But the idea is that the benefits of that outweighs the sacrifices, right? And it's the same thing with the social contract, that the benefits you get from being part of the social group outweighs, ideally, the negative limitations on your rights.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody would argue that. Everybody loves fucking being better off.
Yeah, but like, take the cunt with the cell phone. If we didn't live in a society with the social contract, I would have been fine to throw a little hip into that and smack her head off. But because we live in a place with a social contract, that is legally considered fucking assault.
Yeah, because you agree that me not having to worry about getting punched in the face every day, all day, is worth me not knocking this chick with the cell phone over.
Yeah, exactly.
I love her having like the ethical obligations against teenagers surfing TikTok. You guys can only find this kind of shit here. I'm not lying to you. There's no Gumroad course that sells this. It'd be too expensive. Yeah, the whole thing.
$4,777.
Mm-hmm. And I never thought I would say it, but Dougie is kind of like, I'm warming to him now. I've been fuck Doug for like the last 15 months, but he's been kind of against the idea of the passport thing. I just don't get, why do we need a new thing? It's like you said, that's what I was thinking of before too. It's like, we've already have methods to handle people who need vaccinations to move from one place to another. Why do we need this electronic passport?
Oh, I do like that.
You like it?
But then again, you have to keep in mind, like, I'm a bitch for convenience.
Ah.
Like, when I first heard of Google Maps, I was like, no fucking way, they keep tracking me everywhere. But it's just so fucking convenient, isn't it?
You know what? When I still fly to the States, I don't walk into that stupid x-ray machine. I demand that they cup my balls in person every time. I don't know why. It's just one of those things. I'm like, this is my one place that I will be difficult. I'm not standing in the airport machine. Apparently you don't get, I don't know if anybody's getting cancer from it or not. I was just like, for some reason, that one, I think it's because they made me take off my shoes, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. If you get to see my feet, you get to see my balls too.
My take on that was just on the basis of, if you can make something convenient enough, people will accept it. And call me a bitch, but I like being able to pay for my groceries with my watch, being able to open my fucking apartment with my watch, being able to unlock my car with my watch.
Oh, dude, the cell phone pay is awesome. I love that shit.
Because I don't have to carry my wallet every fucking where. I don't have to carry like 3 sets of keys. Like, it's just convenient. It's the same reason, like, with biometrics or cell phones, it's unsecure as fuck, but goddamn if it isn't more convenient than, like an 8-digit passcode.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I 100% agree. I'm surprised that hasn't come up more often, I guess that's kind of a form of two-factor, because it's not the thing you know, but it's the thing you have, which I think is much more secure. I mean, what do they have to do to get like through an ocular biometric security thing? They have to take your fucking head and slam it into the thing, right? That's what they always do in the movies.
Yep.
Way more secure than somebody's password that's the same as their luggage.
That's point.
That's what it means. So always give it to the tyrants, to Caesar.
Yeah.
Caesar.
Six Semper Tyrannis. Yeah, I got that part. I just did. There was a second part of that sentence I didn't understand.
So remember, dude, I'm just like a poor fuck farmer. I'm not well read on the classics. I don't have, like, Immanuel Kant. If it wasn't for a YouTube video summing it up in 10 minutes, I wouldn't be able to talk to you about it at all. Or the shit that you tell me.
Yeah, but the problem, like, here with Six Semper Tyrannis is I didn't learn that from reading Latin or the classics. I learned that because fact fuckers in the southern United States who drive trucks have it plastered all over the back of their goddamn trucks.
That's awesome. Is that Latin? Nope. That's Second Amendment. Oh, fair enough.
Well, it's the same thing as like the what's it? Not the Gatsby flag, but it's Gat something anyway. You
Okay.
know, the don't tread on me thing?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. The California one, I think,
Yeah,
isn't
I've
it?
always thought it was. No, it's like the snake with the thing on it.
Yeah. Okay.
The California one has a bear on it.
Oh, fair enough.
Anyway, like the reason why I found that like "Don't Thread on Me" flag is when you know these dumb cunts fly like the "Don't Thread on Me" flag with the thin blue line flags.
Oh, yeah, literally the don't tread on me, but tread on me.
Yeah, it's kind of like the you have this clip. I'm not sure if I could re-find it, but I saw it back when with the January 6th thing when Pat Stedman fucked up his life. Uh, where you have like a cop on the ground, literally getting the shit kicked out of him with a thin blue line flag.
Oh, dude, that one's awesome too. Jesus. Oh, I don't get the pro cop thing. Like even when I was in the military, the most hated trade in the military was the MPs. Everybody hated the MPs. And they always have to hire a certain kind of person. Like I remember RCMP, a lot of my friends tried joining the RCMP and then they started finding out their weird stringent requirements. Like one guy couldn't get into the RCMP. He passed everything: the psychological tests, the physical tests, the education test. The thing he failed was during the polygraph. They asked him if he had ever like bootlegged CDs in high school, and he's like, "Yeah," and I'd sell them to my buddies for like $5, like mixtapes. So he basically got denied access to the RCMP or the FBI for Canada because he made mixtapes in high school. And I was like, what the fuck kind of Charlie Church milquetoast guy are you going to hire where that's the kind of thing that gets you booted? And it
I
makes
think
sense
that's
when you
kind
see
of
the shit that they pull.
By the way, I just went and got the beer I was telling you about earlier.
Oh, yeah. All right, tell me about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's called. It's from Mast Landing Brewing Company in cooperation with Astlin Beer Company. It's called Super Wrastling Moves Collaboration Double Dry Hop IPA, and the whole label on it is done like a Nintendo thing.
All right. Oh, dude, they literally did take the old wrestling Nintendo thing. I just pulled it up. All right, guys, you're going to love
Yeah,
this. Where's the share screen thing? Share screen. Brave tab. Super wrestling moves. All right, here's the one. Is this about what it looks like?
yeah, that's exactly it.
Dude, that game was shit, by the way. If it's the one
I
I'm
just had
thinking
to
of.
buy it because I figured I wanted a beer for. I haven't been drinking on this cast for like fucking forever. And I kind of felt like having a beer today, and I was walking by like the line. I was like, okay, you know what? I just have to buy that fucking thing. It's like I had the same thing with like last year. I was in like a big like selection store,
Yeah, yeah.
and they had one that had like a picture of Donald Trump as a peach on the front, and it was a sour beer, and I don't even like sours. I had to try it just because of the label.
I honestly like that one. They know their audience. Like that's a guy who's 35 to 45, raised millennial, but didn't have the internet until high school. You know, has kids now, probably wants to relive his childhood, paid way too much for like a vintage console. Like that's a perfect sell. I like that one. Oh, speaking of which
Yes,
too,
JS.
have you seen those things?
Ah, which things? The mini
Uh,
console thingies?
Yeah, well, I guess like people are buying shit like an unopened Legend of Zelda box and Super Mario Brothers box. They're going for like 2 million or 100,000 shit like that. And I guess a lot of the old classic games on eBay, they're getting that same 10 times valuation that you got like with your whiskeys there. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is, but everybody's bitching that the old retro console game shit is just blowing up right now. I guess because everybody's bored during COVID or something. I don't know.
Well, you also have to keep in mind, like, we didn't get all consoles when we were kids.
Yeah, we got one.
Like, if you had a Nintendo, you probably didn't get a new one until like N64.
And you never got a
So
Genesis if you got a Super Nintendo.
no, of course not. So I think what a lot of guys are doing is they're kind of collecting all these things they didn't get when they were kids.
The midlife crisis, except for now it's not a Corvette.
Yeah, some sorta. It's the same thing.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, now driving a Corvette would kind of be politically incorrect, wouldn't it?
Dude, I don't think I've ever seen a Corvette in the last 15 years. I can't recall. It wouldn't be hard to spot because they have the little racing flags as their logo, right?
Yeah, see, it's not hard to spot. I've not seen those like big American muscle cars for a while.
I've seen Chargers and Mustangs still, but it's always I think it's because of Transformers. They got popular there for a hot minute. I don't know if you
Yeah,
remember those.
no, I didn't never watch the Transformers movies. Like I'm very bad with like Marvel and superhero movies in general.
Yeah, to be fair, I watched the first one and I was kind of more confused, mostly because everything was just it was looked like a seizure-inducing coma at the beginning, and then the second one, I walked out halfway through because they were fighting on top of the pyramids, and one of the Constructibots was standing on top, and then they had two wrecking balls, and they pretended like the robot had testicles, and I just left. I haven't watched one. I watched none of them until the Mark Wahlberg one, which was just a giant advertisement for like Beats headsets and Bud Light, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Which I guess
Yeah,
is the
like
most
usually,
authentic Transformers because it was there just to sell merch.
yeah, but like to be honest, like I'll have times where I'd be like watch like eight Marvel movies in like a weekend. But I find that most of the time, if I want to watch it, it's always like this weird stuff that no one else watches, and I kind of have to catch up on some things just to be able to join the conversation. Like, it was impossible to work in corporate and not watch Game of Thrones.
Dude, I remember that was like Mad Men was big on that one too. And I had to
Yeah,
catch it
Mad
like
Men
five
was
years
big.
too late. Yeah. But yeah, Game of Thrones, same thing. And I first three seasons, then I kind of fell off the grid on that one. I'm the same
Yeah,
as
that's a
you.
good thing.
Like I was when a girl was gone, and so I'm like, I'm gonna watch Fist of the North Star. I haven't watched that in like a decade. And I was like, man, this is awesome. But it's just little
Yeah, like
obscure shit like that, or like weird esoteric stuff. I find that stuff way more interesting.
I watched Brain Dead the other day.
Brain Dead. I don't know this one.
Oh, like Peter Jackson, the guy who directed Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
He did like two kind of really campy comedy horror movies before he became like really famous.
so like, was this before or after Evil Dead? Like, was he jumping on that bandwagon that what's his face that Sam Raimi was doing, or was he doing it at the same time? Or
Yeah,
what?
it was way before that. Like his splatter face was he had three like Bad Tastes in 1987. Meet the Feebles, never saw that one in '89, and then Brain Dead in '92.
Huh. I might have to check those out. Because that's like the other
But
one I've been getting into lately too. Do you remember Freaked?
no,
That one. It's probably the best movie that nobody's ever heard of before. It was Alex Winters, the guy who played Ted on Bill and Ted. It was like the 90s movie. It had that MTV aesthetic. It was just like a rich, celebrity kid gets left on this carnival thing and turned into freaks. And I think Keanu Reeves had like an uncredited part in it. But it's just fucked up for no reason. I to even describe it, like I guess like at one point, here's because that's the tone. At one point, he's having a conversation about doing like being a spokesperson for like a rich chemical company. And then he's like, hey, didn't I hear this stuff was dangerous and getting people killed? And then he brought in his major scientist. And then as the scientist is talking about how safe things are, he starts getting shorter and shorter until by the end of the speech, he's like a 3.5 foot tall, like little person. It's like weird, random shit like that. And I just found it hilarious.
yeah, it's last time I watched like I think it's A Night at the Roxbury. And it,
Oh, there's
but
a
anyway, it's
classic.
like, but I'm not sure if it's that one or if it's another similar movie. But like, there's a scene in it where Sarah Silverman is mouthing off, and some guy turns around and screams at her, "Someone shut that cunt up, or I'm gonna come over there and fuck start her head."
No, that's Way of the Gun. That movie is fucking awesome.
Oh,
That was right at the start. It was Benicio del Toro and Ryan Philippe. They're counting money at the car, and then they're sitting on her boyfriend's car, and he's like, "Get off the car!" And then she just starts yelling at them. And I remember that because my favorite part is the scene where like she's yelling at guys, calling them queer and all this stuff, and then the boyfriend's like, "Look, I know my girlfriend runs her mouth, but she's right. I'd like drop your ass if you do anything." And then they throw him out of the way and start punching Sarah Silverman. Get their ass beat, and they're just laughing the whole time. It was probably the best intro to a movie I've ever seen. Plus, everybody hates Sarah Silverman now, so it's worth it just for watching that moment. Yeah, shut that bitch up
Uh,
before I fuck start her head. That was the line.
yeah, it's like that goes into like my top 10 lists of movie lines all through history.
Oh, dude, I'll gush about that movie forever. It is amazing. It's like it's The Usual Suspects. It's like that kind of good. That last
Yeah, it
scene where they're
is.
just having the fight out in the old Mexican hotel, the shootout at the American border, the plot, the whole thing. Because they're just, well, if you guys don't know, it's a story about these guys trying to get a score by kidnapping some rich guy's like surrogate baby. And then that guy happens to have ties with the mob, and the mob doesn't want him to pay because then it exposes their criminal activities. And then it's just, yeah, basically shootouts. It's well worth it. Oh, Carl Marlin, $10 super chat. Thanks, brother. Looking forward to hearing about how your your experience goes, Carl. Hopefully, no side effects. I've gotten more open to it as I watch more people not have any problems, but still not sure.
Well, the way I see it is, give me 2 seconds, Ryan. Just run your mouth for a second.
Please do. Oh, okay, yeah. It turns out, what's the guy's name? One of the pickup accounts that I follow, I can always get it fucked up. It's like Red Pill Dad PUA, I think it's called. He got his done a little while back, and he never noticed any symptoms. So I think the symptoms are generally overblown. Like there's going to be some edge cases, and I don't know what the percentages are because you can never get a straight answer. You just get somebody throwing you some fucking screenshot from Facebook. But according to YouTube, though, perfectly safe, and that's my official stance on it. But like I said, I don't like that because that's kind of not the conversation I'm wanting to have. I'm wanting to have about doing things the right way. Like I hate cutting corners. And then
Yeah, I just looked this
you're
up
back?
now.
Okay.
Yeah, because they were asking like about side effects. Well, you can get an allergic reaction, which can cause rash and swelling.
Right.
You can get flushing, low blood pressure, fast heartbeats. You can get blood disorders such as thrombocytopenia and leukopenia, which is low number of platelet cells and low number of white blood cells, and you can get liver or kidney damage.
So what's the likelihood? Is that like a 1% chance or a 0.02% chance? You know what I mean? I never know those numbers.
Yeah, I kind of fucked that up because those are not the side effects from the vaccine. Those are from paracetamol.
Oh, look at you go. Oh, I love what you did. Dude, I have done that same fucking thing too. It was somebody talking about death rates and shit like that. And I was like, oh, yeah, but like absolute risk and relative risk make a difference. You can say this is 10 times as deadly, but if the difference is 0.2% versus 0.02%, I don't really care. And the guy's like, no, a 0.2%. We should make big steps for that. I'm like, I got it wrong. I was actually talking about the flu. My bad. Anyways, what were you saying about the flu stat? He just left. He's like, I'm like, people are horrible at risk assessment.
Yeah, but it's also like my grandma is one of those people who she can take any kind of medication and she will get every fucking side effect.
Fair enough. One of those lucky bastards.
Kind of like letting the people who are the most afraid govern anything is never good. Like, can you imagine getting the guy with the worst approach anxiety ever to do like a Sarge?
I want to think of some kind of like Rivellino joke right now, but I can't come up with one other than just saying lines.
Or like have the biggest pussy in the manosphere be the guy who has to talk on boundaries.
Oh.
So like
Off topic then on that one. The Plymouth shooter joins Pat Stedman as being representative of the manosphere. Jackson could speak Elvish, that's why he got the Lord of the Rings gig. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Plymouth...
Okay,
have you heard about this guy?
Yeah, isn't he the guy who went out and shot a bunch of people because he couldn't get laid?
Yeah, and he had like a YouTube channel, and he was talking about, dude, he's feeling like the Terminator right now, and it was just... I'm actually surprised. I guess the COVID thing is better for scaring people, because I haven't heard much on it. Like, I know it's not going to mainstream until people other than Rolo send me the articles, you know?
Yeah, it's just one of those cases that I don't like talking about them because like some people always want to link that to the manosphere, but it's psychiatry. Most of them are people who needed to get psychiatric care. And it's one of those, like, as I'm watching, like, alcohol consumption rates go up, weed consumption rates go up, other drug consumption rates go up, I can't help but feel that we have a lot of untreated psychiatric patients out there.
Well, not just that. Isn't there something like some small percentage of people who smoke weed will like amplify paranoia? Like they just have
Yeah,
that
yeah.
as a trigger. But yeah, and then as you get more people smoking weed, that number is going to increase too.
No, I kind of disagree with that. What you're talking about there is the total consumption model.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's came up in the 60s, 70s, part 80s, but the idea there is that the amount of people who have problems with any kind of drug is about 10%. We can verify that empirically, that about 10% of people will develop some kind of issue with it.
Okay.
But what TCM says that the more people who consume drugs, the more people you will have in that severe category. But the
Well, not
severe
the more that you
categories,
have, but just the more occurrences of those people who otherwise wouldn't.
well, let's say you use that linear model. If 100,000 people are drinking, 10% will develop problems.
Okay.
But then it depends on how severe are those problems, because it's not just about, okay, 10 people develop problems. Define a problem. That could be anything from like liver failure, psychosis, it could be a delirium tremens, it could be a ton of different side effects from drinking alcohol, right?
Right.
And if the extent of your problem is about the same as mine, which is you need 2, 3 beers not to kill people, that's not really going to count as a problem because you're still functional, you still get your job done, you can still, handle life.
Well, that's the
But
same
then
as
you get,
that goofy MGTOW argument where, like, what are they saying? That 20% of, or 1 out of 5 women is sexually, struggle hugged during university. And then you go back to the study, it turned out what they defined as, like, problematic was, did you drunkenly have sex? And of course the girls all answered yes. So while they said it was like a problem, it wasn't actually a problem because the way they defined it made everything a problem.
yeah, it's just kind of the same thing here. So what you need to look at are the people who develop the seriously severe problems because that's where toxicity kicks in.
Yeah.
Because like I'm fairly confident that I could smoke a gram of weed a day and still get about 95 to 98% of the shit I need to get done.
Huh. Really?
And I would probably not get any negative side effects from it. However, if I were to drink alcohol all day every day, my liver would probably be sending me hate mail. Or if I did cocaine every day, or heroin every day, or methamphetamines every day, because that has to do with like the toxicity and the, let's say, constant damage.
Well, that also has to do with the risk acceptance. Like you said yourself, where a lot of people making that argument for weed makes sense in a vacuum, but if you compare it to the other things we've already accepted as acceptable, car accidents, like you said, cocaine overdoses, drinking problems, then it seems like you're making two-tiered risk assessments, which makes no sense. Well, I 100% agree. I love when you compare things to other things. Like with COVID, for example, how many people have died from COVID versus other things? And I think I looked it up. It's like in Canada, it's 6 times deadlier than the flu, but it's less deadly than like diabetes or heart attacks or like accidents, shit like that. So you kind of like have to judge, well, how panicked are we about this and how panicked are we about this? They're about comparable.
Yeah, that's kind of in my argument with like the drug side of things. Because we have millions of people in the Western world taking opiates and benzodiazepines every fucking day. Why is the death rate so much higher among the people who take illegal opiates versus legal opiates?
I'm going to take a guess and guess that's a purity issue.
It's a mixture of things. It's a purity issue, obviously, because if you get something from Pfizer, it's obviously going to be better quality than if you get heroin from Jesus.
Right.
But then there's also the usage pattern. Because if you take a pill from Pfizer, you know exactly how much of the active ingredient you're getting. If you get heroin from Jamal, you don't. Now,
Oh,
you're
right.
going to
If it's
swallow.
stomped on or not stomped on.
Yeah, but you're also going to swallow the pill from Pfizer. You're going to inject the heroin from Jesus. And that's a difference too, because injection is the most risky form of drug use.
Which makes
It's
sense
actually
because
it's one of the funnier things if you start to look into the data, because you have kind of like two parallel drug cultures in Europe, at least. I'm not sure how it is in the States and so, but you have the countries where people primarily smoke heroin, and you have the countries where people primarily inject heroin. And
and I'm
the
gonna guess their
countries
stats
where,
kind of reflect that.
yeah, because injection, the countries with primarily injecting users die a lot more often. And it's simply because, like, if you're smoking something, you have more control over how much is hitting your bloodstream at a given time. If you're injecting something, you're injecting that whole thing one go and boom.
See, that's kind of interesting. Never really thought of that one that way.
And it's kind of funny. You have a study from 2016 where they looked into. I'm going to cite the cannabis stat because I thought that was the most interesting one. Because that pointed to that about 20% of weed users smoke 80% of the weed.
Yeah, Pareto distribution. That makes sense.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But if those 20% of the users are what we based our entire policy on,
Oh,
that means that we're basing the policy for the 80% who have no problem handling this shit based on the 20%, or rather, most likely a subsection of those 20%. Because, like, take Seth Rogen. He's smoking weed constantly every day, and dude is making millions.
but I agree. Yeah, but then the likelihood of those ones experience getting past that threshold to like I don't know psychosis or whatever the bad thing is would probably be higher just because they're taking a higher dosage. But it's a small proportion, so you can't extrapolate that for everybody. And I agree that it would make me hypocritical if I disagreed on that, but then I applied the same logic that you just said was bad for weed and applied it to COVID. So that kind of you sold me on that one. I'm gonna go get jabbed. Actually, I think we have to. They made it illegal. I'm not gonna be able to travel, buy groceries, eat at restaurants pretty
I
soon
think that's
here.
going a bit. I think that's going a bit too far, but
Oh, I
I do
agree.
like the idea. I do like the idea of incentivizing people to get the vaccine if they have enough data to back it up. I don't think they do,
I don't think
but
they
then
need to
again,
though. All they had to do, not
the way
even data on just the safety of the vaccine. We already have a system in place for that. It's
yeah, but dude, I buy weed from a dude named Hassan every 2 to 3 weeks. Like if I'm putting that in my body, I shouldn't be that concerned about Pfizer. Like if you're doing cocaine, you don't get to be an anti-vaxxer.
that would be funny. I remember that show too, where they showed how they were making that when they were using like they were throwing them in barrels and then filling it with diesel and then filtering the stuff out. And I was like, holy crap, that explains the sour smell of crack, diesel. Ah,
No,
I guess
kind of
we
like
gotta.
the
You go.
no, like the point being that, and I kind of agree with what Kong's saying about my Seth Rogen comment here. It was kind of flippant,
Oh yeah.
but it was more of a comment on the fact that how much should you be willing to limit a certain group's rights because a certain number of people will have negative consequences? Because we have people who have negative consequences. Like people talk about Rohypnol as a date rape drug, but do you know what's the most common date rape drug?
Alcohol.
Yep.
But I guess then there's that same argument. Well, you need to drink more of it. And I'm like, yeah, girls don't seem to understand that. I'm actually surprised. How many times growing up have you heard girls talk about how they were probably roofied, but it just turns out they were blackout drunk? Probably a
More
lot.
often time than girls have actually tested positive for roofies.
Same. Yeah, I've seen once. Actually, twice. But the other time was military because of the guy we found out after the fact. But once. My girl and my buddy and his girl, because I was the DD that night, and they all on their last drink somebody slipped something into it, and the only reason I knew that they actually got roofied is because I guess my buddy passed out. Once he got home, it kicked in, and just as he walked into the door, he like passed out in the hallway. And like he never passes out in the hallway. He's a big, tall guy, a big bruise on his head. He's laying there for like 12 hours. What the hell happened? And then his girlfriend, same thing. My girl fucking had to haul her in a fireman's carry into the house. It was just very strange. Just came out of nowhere. But yeah,
Yeah,
most
but
people
at
it's
that
like, yeah,
point,
just blackout drunk.
yeah, but at the same time though, like if you roofie a chick at the club, if you can throw an unconscious girl over your shoulder and carry her out of the club and nobody asks any questions, shouldn't the club take part of the blame here?
I agree. But that's the thing. It wasn't even for guys trying to like struggle hug girls and that. There was some anti-military sentiment, and every time somebody would see a taper trim, they would just start roofing sailors.
Cool.
And the reason we found out this was a thing because guys kept getting charged with drunkenness at the base until we found out this one guy is like, I've had one drink, and he was making this case, and they found him passed out in an alleyway, and he pulled like a box cutter onto a cop trying to pull him out of there and stuff. And it turns out he's just one of those guys that just goes crazy with the Rohypnol. And yeah, we had to put out like a big issue telling guys to like basically telling guys to act like chicks. Like don't take drinks from random people. Always keep an eye on it. And then not a single guy said, well, maybe we should teach guys not to Rohypnol. They were just like, yeah, I'm going to protect my drink and not get drugged. Turns out that system works, girls. So with the struggle hugging thing, just take precautions.
Yeah, but that's a general thing, though. I think people are trying to offload more and more is that aspect of personal risk or responsibility for your own personal risk management.
That I can agree with 100%.
Because, like, do you have like the headphone trend in Toronto?
Which one?
Well, where people are using like noise canceling headphones when they're walking around the fucking street.
Possibly. I know a lot of people wear Beats and like Beat type headsets, but they might be just noise canceling. I couldn't tell you.
Well, the reason I'm asking is like there's like an increase in traffic accidents in urban areas. And my theory is that it's because these fuckers are wearing headsets that mean they don't hear when that Mercedes is coming up behind them.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense.
And it's kind of like the thing, like, you can't be on your phone when you're in your car. You can play music, but you can't, like, use monitors and shit. And I think the fact that Tesla put a goddamn tablet in their car where you can play movies is probably one of the worst decisions ever made by a car manufacturer. But anyway, the point being that you are technically required to be aware when you're moving around. Like, it's one of those basic things we expect people to do, like, look both
Dude,
ways
it's so
when you're
basic. I
crossing a
never thought of
street.
it that way until you mentioned it.
But when people are walking like that cunt from earlier with a goddamn cell phone, like when you have that cell phone shoved into your face and you have headphones on, you're blocking out every single indicator that something could be wrong.
Yeah. And
Because like most times when I've ended up in a situation where I actually got hurt, it was where if it wasn't for the fact that I'd been drinking, that I was stressed, that was short on time, that I was pissed off, etc., I would have caught that, okay, I should do something different here. But because I was in a different state, I did something stupid and I ended up getting hurt.
But yeah, you can always trace it back. It's kind of one of the and fuck. I know we're not talking about red pill, but it's one of the things I always say. It's like if you trace it back far enough, you're going to see the decisions you make to get the outcomes you're getting here, and you just have to accept that or make different decisions. Same thing. And I don't agree with making it illegal too, because then you end up with that stupid airport security theater shit. Like, well, what did the last terrorist do? Well, we'll make that a law. And that's what everybody does is this constant game of catch up. Like that one. Well, noise canceling headphones are illegal. So then somebody will do something else to get stupid. Maybe they're wearing the stupid Google glasses and watching the movies. Now Google glasses are illegal, and now like tablets in your car is illegal, and it's a never ending game of whack-a-mole that doesn't solve anything. It just makes it so that it's impossible not to break the law.
Yeah, but I do think that's part of like the whole trend we have where we're supposed to make everything super safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just people hate responsibility. Like we have this thing in the red pill where it's like women don't like nobody likes responsibility. Responsibility is a pain in the fucking ass, okay? And people are trying to offload that to the state. And when the states gets that responsibility loaded onto them, they're like, how do we fix people wearing noise canceling headphones? Oh, we ban them. How do we solve people using those small electric scooters all over the center of the city? Oh, we ban them. How do we solve the problem with people going to illegal raves in the middle of the night without masks? Oh, we ban them. But
You guys had those too?
that is, oh yeah.
Apparently, those were kicking up in Toronto for the while there, and a really nice park too. We missed it, every single one. Damn it.
And kind of the issue with doing that is, like, how are cops supposed to enforce this shit?
They're not. And I think that's the issue. The cops can't enforce it. So technically, it's not even a law. It's incentivizing people to act criminal. You've just
Well, it's
criminalized
kind of like
daily life.
it's kind of like the catch-22 we work the cops into here. Because when you ban drugs, you can ban different aspects of it. You can buy purchasing, production, consumption, possession, etc.
Right.
But some countries banned the use itself. How do you prove that someone's used drugs? You have to take a
So I know
blood
with
test, or
weed you can test, but with coke you
you have to
basically
do.
can't.
Yeah, you can. You can do blood tests and urine samples. It works.
Really? I thought it only had like a 40-minute half-life or something like that. Like you have to be
Uh,
doing it on the way to the test.
no, it's longer than that. But anyway, point being that at the same time, though, the European Court of Human Rights have declared forced blood and urine samples to be basically illegal.
Right. Wait, legal or illegal?
Illegal.
Gotcha.
And you do have some exception for that in most healthcare laws and most psychiatric healthcare laws, where if a given, let's say you have a patient with advanced dementia, you can't actually force them into treatment for things. Or a person who's psychotic can be forced to undergo treatment, but the bar for that is very fucking high. But the level for the cops to do a blood sample is essentially to be, okay, you look like you're high, we're going to run you in and blood test you. And that's become declared illegal by the UN Court of Human Rights, which means you have a ban on consumption of drugs, but you have absolutely no fucking way to enforce it. Because you can never prove that someone did drugs unless they walk up to a cop and blaze a joint in front of them.
Or admit it when they get questions, which I would argue
Yeah,
every military charge I ever saw, the only ones that ever worked were the ones with confessions. It was the weirdest thing. And I'm wondering how that
yeah,
if that applies like civvy side too.
yeah, like never tell a cop anything. It's like, at least it depends a little bit on jurisdictions. Look this up based on where you live. But in the U.S., you can basically ask the cops, like, "Am I being detained?" And if they say no, you just leave.
Yeah.
And if they ask you any questions, just say, "I invoke my Fifth Amendment right."
I think that's the one. You just got to assert your rights. Fuck, where are we going with this one? Oh, the test. Yeah, here's what I'm looking at. Look at it from an incentive perspective. You make something illegal, you make it unenforceable, like you don't have the police resources to enforce it, or they couldn't even if they wanted to. And you make it like impossible to like test for it or to charge for it. So what are you incentivizing there? Well, for the kind of people who automatically respect authority, they're just going to comply with everything. So you're incentivizing the people that don't want to comply with authority because they're basically being told you're going to get away with it. So you might as well do it. And if there's any advantage in there, it's going to happen. Like San Francisco, they had that new law. I don't know if you saw that, where if you steal less than like $900 worth of stuff, the cops are deeming it not worthy of like arrest. So people are just bicycling into Walgreens or whatever and stealing like $100 worth of stuff and just walking out, and nobody can stop them. And stores are starting to close to like, we can't run like this. 'Cause they
Well,
did
I
that
do think
exact thing.
I think that's an issue because I think what happens when countries like knee-jerk go for the ban is the cops get more and more work they have to do. And cops don't really like not prosecuting to the full extent of the law because they think it sends a bad incentive.
Yeah, general
And
deterrence.
and obviously it does. General deterrence, by the way, no backing in scientific research.
No, it's a jurisprudence thing. It's more philosophical than scientific.
Yeah. So anyway, where I was getting with this is when cops can't enforce a law, cops look impotent and weak. When cops look impotent and weak, that emboldens criminals. At the same time, if you're telling your cops to focus on 10 different things instead of 3 different things, they're going to be thinner spread, so they're not going to be able to effectively enforce the law. which means that people lose respect for the police.
And the perception, I would argue, matters almost as much, if not more, than in practice. Because that behaviors changes on perception.
All
Great
that
example of
matters
that,
is
by the way.
perception.
True. Great example of that. Well, what was it? I was just going with this one. It was Sense Canada. They actually have like this thing because there was drunk driving laws in Canada, and they just kept getting more authoritarian. The idea was, eventually, it was like if you have a blood alcohol of 0.08, they could arrest you, and then it kind of got walked back to like, oh no, 0.02, and then to 0.08, and then it was a point of any alcohol at all. Then it got to the point where, well, if you have your keys, you can get arrested. Because, like, if you have your keys, you're showing intent to go to your car. So what guys used to do is, as the cops grabbed them, they throw their keys in the bushes. So now they're just like, okay, so now even if you go near your car, like if you're within a half a kilometer of your car or something like that, they could charge you. If you're sleeping in your car, they could charge you. And then it got to the point that not only could they charge you, but the police were obliged to tow your car, put it in an impound. It cost like about $5,000 to get all this stuff out by the time it's said and done. You had to go on mandatory drunken driving courses for a single like DUI, and then you had to get the breathalyzer stuff installed at your own cost, which is like another. So it worked out to be like $10,000 for any alcohol in your body. It was like a zero tolerance thing, and it got to the point where even the cops were protesting the law because they're like, I can't. Every time I'd set up a roadside check stop, if anybody tests the smallest thing, like you had an aperitif with dinner, I have to basically take 500 hours of time away just to deal with this shit. And it's not helping. And meanwhile, this guy just murdered somebody and I can't deal with that. It was just crazy to see even the cops go against it.
Yeah, there's a debate here now about that. The cops are still defending themselves, but like cops aren't happy to admit when they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
But the thing that's going on here is they did the math on how much like simple drug crime
Right.
actually costs society. And it got to a point where, like, if a police patrol randomly stops someone and they suspect them of having used drugs, they had to pull them into the station, strip search them, get a blood sample or a urine sample,
Right.
and then search their house.
Jesus, that takes a while.
And yeah, the cops were like, well, Jesus Christ, if we tow one dude because we suspect he smoked a joint, we're going to spend the next, like, 2/3 of our shift on this one dude. And that's not exactly effective use of police resources, because unless the guy is a major drug dealer, you don't want to spend, like, half a fucking shift on him.
Right. Which makes, and it seems so obvious when you frame it that way, but that's the problem is that nobody frames it that way because the incentives are all fucked up.
Yeah, I can kind of understand why the cops do it, because let's say you're working in, like, Canada or somewhere, and it's, like, middle of winter, or it's late in the fall, and it's rainy, and it's dark, and it's drab, and it's cold as balls. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be doing a traffic stop on the side of the highway, or do you want to be in the comfort of the police station sipping a coffee while some poor bastard's in the bathroom trying to piss?
You know what? I'm perfectly comfortable steel manning this one too. Maybe his parents got killed by the Joker, and he's like, I have two choices. I can be Batman or a cop and stop murderers, and I'm here to save the world. And instead, you're like arresting and charging guys who had one joint or half a drink.
And like,
That'll
in most
jade a
cases,
guy
like,
fast.
yeah, but like I don't want people to drive drunk. I don't want people to do their jobs drunk or high or whatever. And I do think we need to fix that problem there, because I don't really see a huge difference between being drunk and being high.
I think the military solved it with like, how functional are you? It's like a weird like turn the other cheek thing. Like one of my coworkers, we all knew he was a cokehead, but he always showed up on time. He always did his job, and we're like, good enough. As long as you're not putting any of us in a position where we have to basically say something, we're comfortable with that. I almost think that's kind of a good system because it sounds bad, but it's got that personal responsibility thing too, right?
Well, I do like that system, and then you can take the people, though, because it's one of my main things here is like you do have to help the people who are really in a bad way. So the people who are addictive enough that they're non-functional to the point where they're easy to catch,
Yeah.
shouldn't you just send them to treatment?
Well, yeah, they had a coffee course for that. The military would send you on the coffee course, and then after the coffee course, you'd get your release done. That was kind of like the system in place. Although I think they've
The
walked back
fuck?
the releases now, unless it's hard drugs like weed. I don't think they do that anymore. But yeah,
Yeah, because
alcohol
that's
too.
actually
Alcohol, they'll keep
because
it
I
for
do
alcohol.
because I do think that's kind of interesting with weed in Canada because weed is legal.
Hmm.
So technically, the military should be treating weed the same as alcohol.
Yeah, they are now. They actually had a lot of like briefs on how do they handle this, and it was actually kind of funny when I heard like through the grapevine the kind of things they were planning, and it ended up just being they just treat it like booze now. Same thing. As long as you're functional, you can't smoke 8 hours before a shift. You can't smoke if you're part of like a high readiness unit, like an airline like a pilot or on deployment, shit like that. Very reasonable stuff, but I'm very surprised that they eventually settled on that.
Yeah, and the reason why I want to argue this, though, I would say that you are more functional on weed than alcohol, unless you're talking like a joint versus one beer.
Oh, so you're saying the effects of one joint are worse than effect of one beer?
Yeah, you get more stoned. Well, it obviously this is not a fair argument to make because weed comes in all kinds of alcohol strength and all kinds of THC strengths, and and beer comes up to like 43 fucking percent now. But okay, let's make it easier. Let's say you spent 4 hours smoking weed or 4 hours drinking. I would argue that you're more functional after those 4 hours of smoking weed than the 4 hours of drinking.
Can confirm. I have day drank and I've had a vacation in Amsterdam. Definitely more functional.
Because I think the major issue with alcohol, if I were to name one, is the effect it has on risk.
Yeah. The hold my beer
Because we,
syndrome.
well, like weed, you get paranoid. You can get somewhat introverted and you become more cautious.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol, you become extroverted and you have no concept of risk and you become, let's say, risk ignorant. You're never going to find a dude who smoked like two super blunts and decided to get up on a bar and dance. Like, no chick ever hit the bong and got up at the Motley Crue concert and flashed her tits on their fucking reunion tour video.
I don't even know if I want to picture some 50-year-old lady having that moment. Here's the thing too. I don't mind these discussions either. I don't like them in the sense that it's kind of got that same issues. Like, imagine from a legal standpoint making all of these legal arguments based on the nuances of one drug versus another drug. It kind of ties up the legal system a lot too.
Yeah, but I think you
So I
kind of have to
understand how they
get
have
to
to kind
that
of
point.
blanket policy it.
Yeah, but I think you have to get to the point because the whole drug lists or banned substances list that they have in most countries, they make absolutely no sense from like a clinical or a pharmacological standpoint.
Oh, that's not just drugs either. The Canada, we have a new Trudeau did this thing where he banned all guns in the next 2 years, and his list makes no sense. A lot of guys were pointing out like there's like a musket and assault rifle and shotgun. It's like none of this is any. Apparently, the argument is if the stock on the weapon is made out of wood, then it's for hunting. But if it's made out of plastic or polymer, then it's clearly for assaulting and killing people. And you're like, fair enough.
Well, I would make like if we're going to do the gun debate and I'm going to get killed on this again by the fucking chat, I would say that unless you're planning to shoot at targets that shoot back, you don't need extended magazines. You don't
Remember, I had
need
it was a
30
pain in the
shots.
ass to load guns, so it is an inconvenience.
Yeah, but like if you're thinking like from a purely hunting perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not a shitty ass dog shit hunter, you should
Oh,
be
you
able to
shouldn't
get
need.
your kill with one max two shots.
Fair enough. To be fair, the thing I like about the gun argument is it's largely going to have to sort itself out because of 3D printing tech.
Yeah,
Like I think
that's
we're at
true.
the point where people are starting to manufacture with metal and 3D printers. And once that's the case, all this gun restriction stuff, it's not going to matter. And then you actually have to address the core of the issue, which I'm not even sure I could articulate the core issue at this point. But I know it's there. And then once you get rid of the manufacturing pipeline, well, it's gonna probably pop up very clearly.
Yeah, that's kind of reminds me of the Israeli strategy to get weed legalized.
What did they do?
They dropped weed bags of weed from drones over urban areas. They were basically doing like drone drops of weed over like the city square in fucking Tel Aviv.
I'm trying to figure, like, so who was doing the drops? Was the government doing drops, or was like the advocacy groups doing drops?
No, the advocacy groups. They were doing those drops because they would just make sure that if the police wanted to actually enforce the ban on weed, they would have
Oh,
so much fucking work to do. They would blow up the entire police force.
I get it. I was thinking too. I'm like, is that because it's illegal to sell weed, but it's legal to possess? So if they just give it everywhere, then everybody's got it, and then it's done. But yeah, the whole that's kind of clever, dude. That's like a video game thing. I remember this. The guy Eris, he's like a Tekken commenter, and he goes, "Yeah, if you find there's an exploit or something badly designed, it is your obligation to exploit the shit out of that, because otherwise the developers don't know to patch it."
Yeah, exactly. Well, he has a point there.
Yeah, there we've applied ludology to fucking drug law.
But it's the case for everything, though, right? Like,
Yeah,
the reason why white collar crime is prosecuted as little as it is because it's fucking expensive and difficult to prosecute. Like, if you take a mid-level client, let's say they do like a low revenue, like $100 million a year,
okay.
they can tie the fuck out of the government in court with various filings for fucking years. It's
Yeah, that makes sense because they already have the legal team on retainer, like they already have them on staff, so it's not
yeah,
costing
yeah,
them anymore.
actually costing them less because now they're actually getting fucking use out of their goddamn lawyers.
It's more efficient. Yeah, which is clever. Like it really is clever, and I kind of get it, and that's why I agree. It's like it's too easy to exploit overbearing law because it's incentivizing. If you have a lawyer on staff, or if you are a lawyer, you can basically make it cost so much that it's not worth their time. But if you can't do that, well, then you're basically forced to oblige. But then if
Well,
you're so don't give a fuck that you can just break the law anyway, and the chances of getting it actually caught on it are so low, you're basically squeezing that. You know what that joke is about the middle class are the only ones getting fucked by
yeah.
gun restriction laws?
It kind of reminds me of this. I'm not sure. I think I've told this story on the podcast before,
Yeah, yeah.
but there's a guy who decided to make millions breaching the blockade of Iraq during the Gulf War. And he was perfectly aware when he did it that he would be prosecuted.
Right.
He did it anyway, made bank, and of course he got prosecuted. His lawyers figured out that the average cop stays on the job for 3 years or something on a case before he switched to a new case. So if they were able to slow down the prosecution by about 9 years, that meant you would have gone through like 3 or 4 lead detectives. And every time you transfer a case to a different detective, you lose some part of the documentation.
Makes sense.
So by slowing down the case by 9 years, they had a reasonable argument that at that point the cops would have lost enough of the documentation that they could make the argument, well, that document you're saying we didn't have, well, we had it and you had it in your filing system, but you fucking lost it like these other 10 documents.
Did you make in the legal case of like inflating away debt?
Yeah.
Hey, it works. Like whatever that inflating away debt is how I'm accidentally going to become a millionaire with real estate. I guess I can't be too complaining about it. The dollar might not be
No,
worth
but
a lot, but whatever.
no, but like the point of it is that whenever you do these things, you have to think about the consequences, and you also have to think about malicious compliance. Because you're going to
Engineers are
have a
big on
certain.
that, by the way.
I know. Trust me, I work with them.
I have fair point.
But like you have a certain subgroup of people that I belong to that view it as a competitive sport to fuck up whatever rule you try to put on us.
And it makes sense. I
Like,
mean, how many different examples have we come up in the last hour and a half of like being able to maliciously comply or not comply or comply with law. And that's just like top of our head. You put some guy who's dedicated to it. Oh fuck.
Yeah, but like I did it with one of my former employers because they had a very strict dress code. So they were like, you have to wear shirt, tie, these kind of colored shirt, these colors of ties, these types of pants, these type of shoes. They didn't say anything about socks or tie pins.
I'm curious what your tie pin looked like.
Well, I had a weed legalization pin. I had one with an AR-15 on it. I had one with like the gay pride thing on it. I had one with a huge dildo on it. And the same thing with socks. Like anything I could find that would fuck with their dress code, I'd wear.
Dude, you'd have done great in the military. Guys have done that with like haircut regulations, where it's like the haircut is legal, but it's such a fucked up looking haircut. You're like, what the hell? Like bowl cuts, monk things. The style was all weird. Had to be natural colors to be like just pushing the boundaries on this whole thing. And I was just laughing my ass off because you could always see like the coxswain, the guy who was in charge of charging people. He'd kind of have that one like, so help me God, if you're not flying on the straight and narrow in everything else in your career, I'm going to hammer you for that. Case in point, one guy I sailed with got picked up for having child porn. Huge arrest during the deployment, got sent home. Absolutely insane. Got off on it because they didn't have enough evidence. Everybody kind of got too overzealous with like, oh, I finally caught a pedo. That he got off on that. And then he ended up getting caught with cocaine. And I was like, you fucking idiot. You just beat CP charges. You better be as quiet as a church mouse. And sure enough, man, he's like, well, now I'm invincible. It's like, no, they were looking for it. And sure enough, he got hammered way harder than I've ever seen anybody get hammered for like a drug infraction. And I was like, yeah, that's how revenge works.
Yeah, but obviously, if you're going to fuck with someone for years,
Yeah.
you have to be on the straight and narrow. Because if you're going to fuck, it's the same thing. If you're going to be the kind of the house of a workplace, you have to be able to do that level of performance as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen corporate excuse some pretty fucking heinous shit because they made enough money off that dude.
I've seen him excuse it just because it would cost too much to their reputation to admit that it happened.
Probably security related, if I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah. It's always security related. Here, Cal's got one for you with the extended mag. So I guess you might need it if you're in bear country. But see what I mean now? Now you can't make some stupid law saying you're not allowed extended mags unless you're within X amount of miles from a bear conservatory or something
I don't know.
that. And how do you enforce it?
I kind of disagree with you there because I have seen that type of law actually effectively used.
Really?
Yeah, concerning knives in Europe.
So you have to be within 7 meters of a sink?
No, you have to have a reasonable argument as to why you're carrying a knife.
Oh.
Because the argument is like, at least with knife bans, because in Europe we don't have the American tendency where people just cap each other. We have stabbings.
Yeah, which I remember. Yeah, London had that big for like soccer matches for the longest time.
Which essentially goes to show that you can ban the method, but you can't ban the intent. But anyway, what I was getting at with the knife is you have different knife classifications. So, and you have the reasonable argument thing. Like, if you're a carpenter and you're on your way to or from work and you're like, yeah, dude, I'm a carpenter, I'm heading from work, of course I have a fucking knife. Or you're dressed to go hunting and you're like, yeah, I'm heading out hunting, so I put my knife on. Cops are generally not going to...
match.
As opposed to, oh yeah, I have a fucking 20-inch machete strapped to the inside of my coat.
Oh, some real 90s vibes up of that visual.
It's like, if you're going hunting, nobody brings a fucking Rambo knife when they're going to do woodwork. So you can do it. It's just a matter of are your cops able to show some degree of impartial judgment? The answer is no, but in an ideal world, yes.
Well, that's the
Because
thing
it's not
too. It's
that.
like, oh, never mind. Keep going. I'm just gonna ramble. I didn't care.
No, but that was kind of my argument with it. Is as long as people are able to make recent judgments, these laws are no problem.
Hmm.
But if the people who enforce the laws are incompetent, and the people who try to break them are just trying to fuck with incompetent dumbasses, of course the law isn't going to work. Because the people, well, the tax lawyers that charged 3 grand in fucking hour are always going to be smarter than the public servant making 70 grand a year writing the fucking law.
Which makes sense. That's a simple incentive thing. Oh, actually, here. Do you mind holding on for a sec? I gotta go. I
Yeah.
gotta go for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, what am I supposed to rant about for that for
I don't
30
know. Drug law.
seconds?
You seem to be very knowledgeable about it. Anyways, I'll be right
Yeah,
here.
I'm
I'll be right
knowledgeable
back.
about everything.
Fair point.
No, what I was getting at with the legal argument is just that whenever you ban something, like you can kill people with just about fucking anything. Like you can use a multi-tool, you can use pliers, you can stab someone with a screwdriver. So you can't ban every form of lethal object that exists. For that reason, stop counting down, Conk. For that reason, you have to look at what's behind the assaults themselves. If you don't do that, then you're never going to be able to get at why people are carrying weapons, and they're just going to change to different weapons. And the whole point of that is just people, if you want to kill someone, you're not going to worry about the laws against illegally carrying weapons. If you want to deal drugs, you're not going to care too much about, them being organic and well produced. Cyberpunk, the game, or cyberpunk as a genre in general? Hey, just go to prison, Red Crusader. I mean, they have plenty of. They can make a lethal weapon from newspapers. I think the game. I like the game. I played it on PC. Um, I still haven't finished it because it had that same problem that a lot of like the sandboxy games have had. For me, that they go on for so long that I just get sick of them before they're finished. Like I had the same thing with Mass Effect Andromeda.
Oh, you actually played that one?
Yeah, well, it was some guy asked me about Cyberpunk,
Ooh.
and like I liked the game. It was just that it was too much content and it took too much time, so I kind of lost interest before I finished the game.
See, that's why I
And I
like the
think that's
sandbox stuff. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Keep
that's
going.
why that's why I don't like the sandbox stuff.
Oh. See, I like it because I kind of just come up with my own stuff as I go. And then if I don't feel in a creative mode, I'm just not going to have any interest in it. And then occasionally I might be inspired to try something, like with the second
Yeah, but
channel doing
Minecraft is different. This is like a. I'm not sure if you played Cyberpunk or if you know the game at all.
Oh, the 2077? I know the game. I haven't
Yeah.
played it, but I like the genre.
Well, kind of what I got into with that and Mass Effect and Red Dead and a few other games that had that kind of like huge sandbox but very limited active questing and a lot of repetition between the all the side missions is that you get tired of the game before you finish it.
Oh, are you like okay? Yeah. Well, first off, those aren't sandbox games. Those are like artificial sandboxes. Because, like, I know with Grand Theft Auto, they always had like there was a bridge to the other part of town, but you can't go there until you finish certain stuff. They have these like artificial gates. Is that kind of what the Cyberpunk one had too, where it was like a scripted structure, but it made it think it was a sandbox?
No, that wasn't the problem. The problem with both Mass Effect Andromeda and Cyberpunk, in my view,
Mm-hmm.
is that there was just too much similar stuff to do. And when you start off a game, you want to make it last as long as possible if you like it. But then when you played it, as long as you like it, then you still haven't finished it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the pacing's all fucked up. I go with that too. That's the problem I have with like that's why I hated Red Dead 2. My girl bought it for me for Christmas. And I remember sitting there in the first 45 minutes was just me holding down the A button while it was telling me a story. And I'm like, this is fucking garbage. That was it.
I
I
can
played it
live
for
with
like
that
2 days, and then when I was like doing deer hunting simulations, I was like, all right, I'm fucking out.
Well, I think the good thing with Cyberpunk was it was a lot of fun to start off and play the different kind of class configurations from like start to like level 30. And that's what I kind of loved about Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 as well, is that you can get a lot of fun out of just playing the different classes through the same story, and then you had like Paragon, Renegade, different story choices, and so on.
Yeah,
That
so much
adds spice
replayability.
to that. But the main issue I have is if I'm going to play the same character for like 300 hours, I'll get bored.
That makes
Unless the
sense.
story is exceptionally engaging, everything is well designed, there's no bugs that piss me off. And that's kind of where I am with that game. That was just I played Cyberpunk PC, so I didn't have too many bugs. At the same time, it got to a point where I wanted to level my character to a decent level, so I did side missions, and then once you've done like 100 side missions, you're kind of sick of the game, so you're not going to finish it because you want to do something else.
Fair enough.
I think Horizon Zero Dawn had near perfect pacing, but that wasn't so much a sandbox as a linear game set in a sandbox.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I've never heard of that one. But I don't know. I'm like old school. I kind of like arcade stuff. I like where I can pick it up and put it down. That's why I like Tekken. That's why I like Minecraft. That's why I liked Hunt Down. It reminds me of the old Hunter x Hunter games, or Hunter Hunted ones. It's just like a side-scrolling one, adventure level based. I don't need it to be movies. I don't want my games to be movies. And I'm not liking MMOs anymore. I used to play like EVE Online a bit, and I just hate the idea that it's not even a game. It's not fun. It's just a gambling simulator. That shit's kind of getting to me now too.
Yeah, that's kind of what kind of alienated me to World of Warcraft both times.
Oh, really? Oh, just that where you're looking at it more like a job than a game?
Yeah, well, what happened is like the first kind of expansion was paced reasonably well. So you had the game launch with a bunch of like the instances, right? But it took like 6 months before people started making progress on the hardest instances. And then like 4 or 5 months after that, you got the new instance. So whenever you got to a certain threshold, let's say you killed the hardest instance, you got to enjoy your win for a while. So you could just like slack off and have fun for the next 3 months. But then it became too rapid, so you knew that, oh, I finally got all my gear I wanted this expansion. Oh, fuck it. Guess it's time to start a new goddamn expansion all over again.
Oh, and they just kept iterating it too rapidly for you to actually enjoy it?
Yeah, well, you weren't able to enjoy the. And, like, the first time, what kind of got me was the fact that you get an accomplishment, and the second you get it, the goalposts move.
Oh, yeah, dude, I played it for 3 weeks. I remember that. It was like always cliffhangers. Every time you're 3/4 of the way through it, the next goal starts. So by the time you finish this one, then you're like, oh well, I'll stick around and do this, and then it's like 10 hours later, and you're like, fuck my life. I noticed that. I
Yeah,
thought
and
that was like a conscious decision on their part too.
yeah, what got me with World of Warcraft the second time was just that it became too labor intensive for me. Because I enjoy playing games I like a lot. But when you're at the point where you're like farming or buying gold every week for 4 hours of fun, and then you go back to like 72 hours of drudgery.
Not working for you.
Yeah, it's too much like a job. Like you work Monday to Friday to finance being able to raid on Saturday. Then you relax Sunday and you start over again on Monday.
I know, it's like, and I get it. Those aren't you could make. I don't think you could make it fun actually. Because I'm thinking back, I can't think of an example where they did. You can't make it fun.
That's
All
why.
you can do is make it addictive.
Well, I did like Knights of the Old Republic from BioWare.
Okay.
They made a really good leveling experience. Their mistake was that they had no content at the end. Because naturally, let's say you're going to play an MMO, right, for a
Right.
year, and you play relatively normally, you're going to be max level in like 3 months. Then you have
So
9 months at max level until, let's say, the next expansion.
they need something for
So
you
you're
to do for that 3/4 of the time of the year.
yeah, exactly. At the same time, though, if you make that too steep or too narrow, people are going to just do it too quickly, and it's fucked.
I agree with
But
that.
that's why I like. That's why I kind of like games that say, okay, like we'll give you 50 hours of high quality content, have fun, versus games that say potentially 500 hours of fun.
Such a wishy-washy thing. Potentially, so, people may vary. I'll just switch quickly here because I'm actually curious about Irish's here. I like this one. His CEO, golden retirement. White dude saying there's too many male, pale, and stale members of the board. The problem is generational. Why is corporate throwing younger men to the wolves? Dude,
They're not.
I was just gonna say it's not just corporate either. But what do you what are you gonna say?
Well, my take on it is that the boomers are holding on longer than a normal generation would. So what's happening is you have Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X who are on the size of the boomers in terms of generations. And we have a lot of like external pressures, like you have climate change, you have the different takes on like social policies such as, LGBTQ, you have legalizing weed, etc., the full Oregon thing with decriminalizing all drugs. And a lot of these things are generational viewpoints. It's like I saw this funny thing with like AOC, where some guy put out a meme like, "Should we elect more millennials to Congress?" And the first reply was, "Well, you're gonna fucking have to, aren't you?"
Eventually. Yeah.
Like you can't keep electing Mitch McConnell until he's like 700 years old, unless he's like a floating Futurama style fucking head.
Well, I was just remembering the military had a great example of this one too. A lot of the guys, like the chiefs, would always tell you stories. We stole the American flag off the Bank of Canada building and like the work hard, play hard shit, right? Then as soon as they became a chief, they started locking that shit down. Like no beer machine on board. You know, this is done. This is done. I think a lot of people forget, or maybe they remember too well, how good they had it. And then when they get into a position where they're now running things, they kind of, I would not want to deal with me back then. So I'm just going to make that illegal, which kicks the ladder out from under you. It's like, why did you get to have this great experience and then decide nobody else gets it? That was my impression of it, though. I don't know if that maps too well to like the CEO one here.
I think you're right, because I think it's a shift that happens in a man's head. Because every young man is a socialist. Like when you're 20, you're always a socialist because you're broke as fuck.
Right.
By the time you hit your 30s, mid 30s, 40s, you should have started to have some bank. You should have some money, probably own property, etc., etc. Now you kind of move from building to maintaining. Because you don't want to go back to like sleeping on a fucking futon, do you?
No. God, no.
And kind of the maintenance thing gets stronger and stronger the older you get. So by the time you hit your 50s, 60s, 70s, you just want to keep things as stable as possible until you fucking die. And the biggest problem with that is when you have a company like the one in the super chat is, those
Right.
guys are not going to do anything radical or make any big changes, even if necessary, because that represents a risk to their lifestyle. Like if I had like $1 billion, let's say theoretically, I would put it in fucking index funds.
Yeah, just
The
tied to the
least
economy.
risky, like the least risky thing you can do, while still making enough money to maintain my lifestyle. And
Makes
let's say
sense.
someone has been in politics since they were like 20. Now they're in their, let's say, 50s. They're finally getting up there to do like a prime minister position or get a position as a minister, which is their goal their entire lives.
Right.
Are those the people who are going to propose risky policies?
Oh, guaranteed not.
No, they're not going to risk shit. They're going to just be like, I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to wait.
Yeah,
And it's
there's
the
a
same
great
thing with
parallel to the military on that too. Oh, was it the same thing as though?
Well, it's the same thing as the CEO here and the board. It's just you have a CEO who is still trying to make his mark on the world, is trying to develop the company and to build things. And you have a board who's like, well, we're making like 200 grand sitting on this board a year. Let's just make sure that the young whippersnapper doesn't cost us a retirement.
Yeah, and that's where you get that. Plus, I think once he retires, I don't know if he cares. I was thinking of what was that research one, Theramin or whatever, the chick that got all that funding
Oh
and that
yeah,
VC capital for the drug that didn't work.
it wasn't Theremin. It was something similar to that. It's Elizabeth Holmes was her name.
That's the one. I remember there was like a little article, like a little breakdown, a whole in-depth thing on it.
Theranos.
That's the one, Theranos. And it turns out a lot of like the old board members that were VC funding this stuff kind of had like, this is my granddaughter approach to like the funding. They thought it was great, but it was more like a patriarchal thing as opposed to like a, we need to get more women in there and shit like that. I found that absolutely fascinating, and I'm wondering if that plays out a lot. I mean, picture this board guy worked his whole life to get there. I don't think many CEOs haven't been divorced and maybe estranged from their kids and that, and then they have this opportunity to hire this nice, great, doe-eyed, bushy-tailed, millennial feminist, and it's like, yeah, it's like I can make up for the granddaughter I never get to see.
I can make up for all those girls I meet too during the 60s.
She could be my granddaughter for all I know. Yeah, not sure what to do with that. Like I said, this is why I hate this last red pill thing. I swear I'll talk about this one. This is why I hate those guys. They're like, well, why are women this way? And why is shit this way? And I'm like, we could sit here and ramble for 1 hour and 51 minutes and 31 seconds about why the shit is the way it is. But once you understand it is that way, and you can like predict it somewhat reliably, it's like, fuck, man, why is a stupid question? Why waste your time with it? Save that for when you want to, navel gaze later on. That's my approach to this stuff.
Well, there's also, what value would the why bring you?
Yeah, like,
It's
does
like
anybody
if-
know how their car works? Do you know how to take it apart?
Like-
I don't.
Yeah, but like if I told you the meaning of life right now, would it change anything about the way you're living?
Likely not. Actually, probably almost absolutely not. Unless you were able to tell me when I was going to die. And if I knew it was going to be in like a year, I might live a little more aggressively here for the next little bit.
Yeah, but like Canada had like 50 degrees centigrade some places now, and like towns burned down. And you still have a sizable amount of the population like, yeah, drill, baby, drill.
Well, that's Alberta. To be fair, though, the BC one, that's horrible land management. That's not climate change. But I don't think, but I get what your point is. That's not your point. But what else can you do, right? Like, drill, baby, drill is one argument. But then the other argument is, well, if we become Luddites, we can reverse the clock. It's like nobody wants to save the environment that bad that they have to give up the quality of life that they have today. So now we're in that situation where we just have to complain about it and do like feel good measures because nobody is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to get there. It's like, what do you
I think
want?
that's a
On
problem.
this one, I'm like, fuck it then. Just do your best to sort it out with those constraints in place.
I do think that's kind of like the issue we started with too, with the old CEO and the politicians and everything. It's just a generational thing. Because you're kind of seeing that already in the countries that aren't fucked up by two-party systems. You're
Right.
starting to see a lot of green/environmental parties pop up, and they're getting a lot of votes from younger voters.
Not in Canada, but I hear you. I hear you. Our Green Party sucks so bad.
Well,
But I feel
the
you.
point of
I
that-
feel you.
Well, the point of that being that you have a legitimate, like, generational gap in voting. And the millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Z aren't too happy now. Gen X and Gen Z, I mean, aren't too happy now. The boomers are swimming in shit. That's going to flip at some point. And I'm just wondering what that boomer is going to do when they get told, yeah, we know you've lived your entire life on Easy Street. Now that's going to change. How are the boomers going to react to that? I'm guessing like toddlers.
Dude, at that point, they're going to be too old to be able to do anything about it. Because I think the only way it works is when demographically there are less boomers. So they'll like, it'll be like halfway through the death of the entire boomer generation by the time that becomes an issue. So they may be acting like children, but they're going to be 85 years old at that point or 90 years
I,
old.
don't know, I think we're going to see the flip in like 48 years from now. Because you're already seeing it manifest in the States pretty hard with the Antifa thing
Right?
and Black Lives Matter and all that. So they've actually gotten to the point where they've gotten young people educated. Well, educated and engaged. And that
Not like
doesn't
that.
tend to stop. Well, that doesn't tend to stop. And it
Right.
was the same kind of engagement you got with like the Woodstock generation, the hippies, where a large amount of younger people got organized and they actually managed to change the direction of an entire civilization.
That kind of worries me too. Like, I get the grievance, the Antifa thing. Basically, if these guys could afford a middle class lifestyle, there's no way they'd have been Antifa. You have to have a certain amount of getting fucked over by the system, right? So I get that. My problem with it is while they are organized, it's I don't know if they're capable. Like if you gave an Antifa group everything they ever wanted, I don't think they'd be any better with it. Like the boomers at least had the advantage that they were raised in that like greatest generation World War II work ethic. So they were able to apply their like utopian idealism with like a hardcore work ethic. I think we got
Yeah,
now
but
like boomer laziness with like millennial like narcissism, and it just doesn't. I don't. I'm worried, is all I'm saying.
hey, we're all worried, but at the same time, though, what if you don't want it to be better? You just want it to be different.
Me or them?
I was thinking perspectives because he had this idea that things are always supposed to be better, and
Right.
better is a container word.
No, I feel you.
Because better is whatever you put in it. But right now, we're living in a world that's best adapted to boomer sensibilities. What if the younger generation just wants something different?
Can't argue
Like
that.
they're not looking to make things better by the key performance indicators instituted by the boomers. So instead, they're just trying to change it to something different.
No, I get you. If you don't like the
You
game,
kinda-
just flip the table.
No, but I'm kind of seeing it though, because you know all that artisanal, small scale food and drink we both love? That's the antithesis of the boomer perspective of bigger is better.
Actually, that's a good point. Oh, it's
Because,
even the
like,
red pill
the greatest-
perspective.
Because
roll with the punches.
the greatest generation had local breweries and craft beer and local food, mostly organic. The boomers had mass industrialized produced lagers and McDonald's. And now we're seeing the artisanal, small scale shit come back. And I saw that as kind of a canary in the coal mine. Because food and drink.
You went from
well,
artisanal bread to Antifa. That's impressive.
Well, it's just from my perspective, though, very few things are more personal than our food and drink. They tell a lot about us because they say what you value. Like, if you're swilling Bud Light, obviously you're an uneducated fucking Luddite. If you're drinking a nice crafty IPA, you're obviously a fucking gay millennial. And if you're drinking an aged scotch, you're obviously a man of character.
Wow, how convenient. By your KPIs, you come out ahead.
I know. It's brilliant. But anyway, point being that it's so personal to you what attention you pay to those things. And like the big thing with like boomers were TV dinners. The big thing with the generation now is fresh produce, organic meats, all that bullshit. So they're not looking for the thing that they can produce a lot of fast and cheap. They're looking for the thing that's quality that they can consume and still feel good about consuming it. That's
Well,
why I don't
effort,
feel
too.
guilty about. Well, it's also why I don't feel guilty about the $200 Wagyu I ate earlier this week.
Because you didn't have to eat 7 pounds of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I can't argue it. My fridge right now is all prep cooking. Like we have those 1 quart plastic tubs that kitchens use, and right now it's all full of prep food for the next week. That's just how we do things with our food. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to respond to Bull Rush here, if you drink Crown Royal, you should obviously be in favor of assisted suicide.
If you drink Crown Royal, you have a chainsaw in the back of your truck. Don't at me on this one. You probably fight when you're out of booze. I would say cousin fucking, but most of the guys were just fucking 16-year-olds anyway. God, I'm getting a whole bunch of like childhood nostalgia vibes from that Crown Royal thing. Just throw your D&D dice in the velvet bag if you want to be a true Canadian. That's what everybody did.
Yeah, and who's here, like, if you in Europe you choose from 2 beers, Pilsner or Hefeweizen, what the fuck?
Is
Who has
Pilsner
n-
even a European beer? I thought that was Canadian.
A Pilsner is big in Europe.
Like the red and the blue, or the red and the green can with the Pilsner logo on the front, like that Pilsner, or you just mean Pilsner, the beer type?
Pilsner, the style.
Oh, okay. Because yeah, I'm talking like there's a Pilsner brand, and it's like everybody whose dad lived in the 70s drank it. That one and like
Yeah, fair enough.
Molson Export. See if I can find it. I'll find you a picture. We'll end the cast on this one anyway. We're at the time. Rich is doing
No, but
problems with the red pill on his. Fuck, this is such an anti-red pill weekend. It's awesome.
who's doing what?
Rich is one is like, what's your problem with the
Ah.
red pill? So we're basically going to take a big shit on it.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, there it
Sounds
is.
fun.
All right, here's the box. Give me that thing. Or here's the can, actually. All right, where's the share screen? I'll show you this. You guys want some Canadian vibes? Here you go. There she is. That old style Pilsner beer. This is
Oh, damn.
what I remember from my childhood. I don't know.
Never
I didn't
even
know any
seen
other
that
country
one.
had this. Yeah, it's just
Yeah, because, like, if you go 2 steps to your right,
yeah. Oh, this one
you
here.
hit Pilsner or Kel, which is the original Czech Pilsner they made.
Oh, I did not know
Yeah,
that.
I've been to the brewery. It's a fantastic Pilsner, and if it's poured correctly, the head is thick enough you can put a dime on top of it and it won't break.
Oh, that's cool. I honestly have never seen this not drunken out of a can, so I couldn't tell you if it does any of that. I actually kind of want to I might go out there and get this after the podcast today, just for like nostalgia. Because like I had like a Pabst Blue Ribbon phase for a couple weeks there, where I'm like, it's actually pretty good. I can see why Americans love it. This is like the Canadian Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yeah, so it's kind of classy, but not really. It's like for the people who want to make fun of people who drink Budweisers or Molsons or whatever.
Fair enough. All right, I guess let's wrap this one up. Gendernomics 1 and 2, get the thing. Carl, it's good to hear from you again, man.
Yeah, it's good to hear from you too.
All right, I'm gonna